Awesome. Welcome to another Run Wild with Us. Ask Us Anything. I'm Lisa Kastner. I am the founder and executive editor of Running Wild and Rise Presses. And I am here with you on Thursdays between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern Time to answer whatever questions you might have, typically around publishing, editing, the craft of writing. It could be about actually the individual as a brand, and or I don't know, come up with something random. It's all good. We tend to be pretty good at answering random questions as well. So usually I'm here with minimally two of my uh, acquisition editors, Ben White and Peter Wright. Unfortunately, today, Ben, or rather, Peter will be unavailable. So we might get Ben. Let's see what happens. Now, how this works is in whatever venue you may be watching this. So we're actually live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And you just go ahead into the chat and you put in whatever questions you might have. I repeat the question, and then those who have been logged in from my editing team will take turns in responding to your questions. So first, I see Rod and CJ have said hello. Hey guys, as always, fantastic to see you. So Rod and CJ are two of our regulars, and we do absolutely adore our regulars. So it is again fabulous to see them. And we have Margaret as well. Hey Margaret, how are you doing? So Ben, what's going on, young man?
Good evening.
Good evening. What's new and exciting in Ben world?
Nothing.
Yeah, that's a lie.
Just plowing through.
Just plowing through.
Plowing through two novels, one short story collection. Yeah.
That's not bad.
That's not bad. It, it it seems like it's more because there's work on top of that. Work keeps getting in the way.
Yeah, I feel you, man. Caroline says, hey guys. Hey Caroline. Awesome to see you. Yeah, I just picked up two. Anybody who submitted to the World of Cure anthology, I sent out all the acceptances. We're in the final stages of signing contracts. I'm most likely going to schedule a kickoff with you guys in the next couple of weeks. And I'll send out a note letting you all know that and finding out when's the best time for us to all get together. But I also picked up a novel. I'm meeting with that author tomorrow. I am finishing up two novels, I believe. And I'm writing a nonfiction book proposal. So, yeah. Oh, and I just, attended a strategy session for one of our authors, Lachi, who is, she wrote Death Tango, and we're publishing her through Rise. That novel comes out on October 2nd. And Lachi is actually a multifaceted artist who's on the Grammy board. So super excited to see all of the amazing stuff that's going on in her space. So yeah, that was very, very cool. So I think I was gonna tell you guys something. Oh, anybody who has messaged me or sent me an email or whatever, I need to apologize. I get so backed up because there's so much going on that sometimes it takes me a while to get to your message. Oh, and I'm also working on a secret project that hopefully I can talk about in the next couple of weeks. It should be, fingers crossed, it should be done soon. So yeah, I need a sign off from the person I'm working with to make sure that it's okay to talk about. So anyway, but it's a big one. At least to me, it's a big one. So, and it means a lot on multiple levels. So that one will be a lot of fun to talk about when the time comes. But yeah, so I have just been so backed up. I have so much going on. So, and especially if you're sending me an email and you want some kind of thorough answer, I am going to punt until I have time to actually sit down and give you an intelligent response. Because I don't want to just give you like a yes and then ignore you, or no, and I haven't actually thoroughly read the email. That said, guys, if you've been assigned a production manager, or you have an editor that you regularly work with, please, 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 please go to them. Because in reality, all that's going to happen is if you're sending me an email with a lot of really thorough, questions, and these are all questions that your editor or your production manager could have answered, they're going to do a much better job of responding than I am, because the reality is they've been working with you on whatever it is, right? So by sending it to me, all that means is I'm going to go to them and I'm going to ask them the same questions that you would be asking them, but I'm probably going to convolute it because I don't know what's going on. So just, keep that in mind when you're sending me emails asking like, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And especially, honestly, anything around marketing. If you have not been connected to our head of marketing, Laura, then when the time comes, again, we're probably not going to have you connected to Laura until your book is already in production. And the reason for that is, the reality is that your book is probably not going to get published until at least a year after production is complete. And that has more to do with the sales cycle and the requirements from our distributor and our manufacturer. So now think about this too, though. That's a year out. And then what happens is reviewers and bloggers and anybody from a marketing and social media and publicity perspective, they don't want to hear from you until 3 to 6 months before the book comes out. So you've got a solid 6 months to like just do some really juicy planning of how you want to promote your book, right? But reaching out to like me and asking me my advice on marketing and sales and publicity, and we haven't even hit that, we're not even done the production cycle yet. It's probably not going to be productive for you. I'm definitely not going to be all that helpful. And I really, really, really recommend, follow the process with your production managers. They've got tons of amazing materials to help you through this whole thing, because I know it can be really scary when your book's coming out. It's like, oh my God, what do I do? Who do I go to? Who do I connect with? And it's all good, right? Just, do that, right? Do what I just recommended. Because again, you're not going to get very far if you're more than a year out. And really, I think you'd probably be best suited, or it would be best if you actually use that time to plan out what you're going to do 6 to 3 months to 2 months to 1 month prior to the book coming out. So just, keep that in mind. Caroline asks, yikes, do I need to talk to Laura? So Caroline, you should go to your production manager if you've been assigned a production manager and ask her for all of the marketing materials that we already have. And if, to fill out whatever materials that you might need. Right. And there will come a point where, again, when we're closer to your publication date, that we'll reach out for things that we actually do manage. Like we do a 20 questions with authors. We try to do that right before the book comes out, or around, the first couple months of the book coming out. We do storytellers happy hour. We like to highlight either our own authors or people who've been affiliated with us in some way. We love the guest appearances too. So if you've got a buddy who wants to join us, that's all good as well. So yeah, just do that. And again, if me mentioning all this, you're like, oh my God, I need to reach out to Lisa. That was not the intent of this. The intent of it was for you to reach out to whoever your production manager is. And if you are in that stage, and ask them, right? Because they've got everything that you need. Or if you're not at the point where your book is fully edited yet, then hold your horses, write down all these fantastic ideas you have. And then when you are actually assigned a production manager, then drive forward. So,
Caroline, you're not at the yikes stage yet. So you're still okay.
And then Rod says, may I ask a far-fetched, maybe silly question? Rod, you are welcome to ask any dang question you want.
Ask us anything.
And believe me, I'm sure it won't even be close to some of the silliness we ask ourselves on a daily basis. So I'm going to bet you're good. Rod says, I think you've said you are connected with a major agency. I've seen shows made from short stories. If your agency liked my story, The Writer Within, in your anthology, does that equate to money? So, okay, this is how it works. No matter what the form is, meaning novella, short story, novel, nonfiction, we send you a contract. In that contract, it then has a clause about us representing you for licensing. Now, that licensing could be anything from translation. It could be audiobook. It could be, if we're not doing the audiobook, right? It could be short. It could be a movie. It could be a TV show. Pretty much anything you can think of. We are represented by the Seymour Agency. And what we do is, so if you accept those terms, then we provide it's called a one pager, right? So we provide a one pager of your story to the Seymour Agency. And then what they do is, when they're going out and shopping stories and they're talking to their different contacts, whether it's a producer or, it could be another publisher in the UK or Germany or whatever, right? They typically ask for specific types of stories. So they're going to go through our catalog of upcoming stories or of stories that we've already published and look for things that fit within whatever that scope is, whatever those requirements are from whoever it is they're talking to. So bottom line is, it depends, right? If you wrote something that someone's interested in and they want to acquire it, right? They want to license the right to leverage it in some way, then it could equate to cash. Now, when we actually do, the way that we work when something's been licensed is, when we get the offer, we actually are very transparent. We share the offer with you, right? Including the actual contract that's been sent to us for whatever it is, to make sure that you feel comfortable with it. And if you do feel comfortable with it, then we'll move forward with negotiations and so on, right? So it's very much a collaborative effort. We don't do anything without your consent, without you in conversation. And honestly, that includes audiobooks, right? So when we do audiobooks, whether it's us who are producing it through ACX, or if we're actually basically licensing it out to, like a major audiobook company, again, if it's out to a major audiobook company, we share the contract with you. We let you know what the terms are that they've brought forward. And then when it comes time to review potential audiobook voice artists, we actually send you their voice samples. And so you get to be a part of that decision-making process versus it just being handed off to you and you're told, guess what? Joe's your audiobook talent, right? Rod said, I've worked with you enough to trust you completely. Well, that's very kind. Thank you, Rod. We may get rich together. Oh yeah, sure. Off of a single short story. Why not? You already have fame. I'm still trying to be known as existing. Okay. Sure. So yeah, actually those are all great. Those are all great questions. We haven't gotten those questions before. So thank you, Rod, for asking that. Oh, also we are, I'm going to actually, hopefully this weekend, do another cycle of checking in with all of our editors to see who's available to take on another title. I know over the summer, everyone's just been swamped and exhausted and, you name it. So we have, we're slowly getting through and assigning all of our backlog of titles to editors. So, again, if you're someone we signed, and again, we're very transparent in the fact that we're really backed up in terms of titles that we've acquired and getting them assigned to editors to move forward through the actual editing and production process. And if we do sign you, or if we have signed you this year, it probably means you're probably going to get published in 2025. Again, we're very transparent about this. So emailing me and asking me, when the hell are you going to have an editor and why can't you be published like this year? That's not going to accomplish anything for you. It won't accomplish anything for me. And it's just going to end up getting delayed in terms of my response, because I'm going to explain what I just explained, right? And I need the time to actually do that. So I just ask you to guys really, trust in, we haven't forgotten you. Much of this is really dependent on us having editors who have the time to go through and, and actually really do a great job of working with you. So. Oh, Rod says, I asked because the producer asked me about my story today. Well, that's fabulous. Congratulations, Rod. When offline, if you want to talk about it, just let me know. Rod says, oh, by the way, of course, all Running Wild and Rise authors are welcome on my show. Relax and chat. But I do recommend doing the show like 2 months before your book's release date. 2 years is too soon. Yeah. So guys, to Rod's point, unless you're Barbie the movie and you're putting out feelers like a year before the film comes out, you really probably don't want to start doing really deep promotions until, to Rod's point, maybe 2 months before. I say 6 to 4 months, because we usually actually start sending books out for book reviews 6 to 4 months before the book's pub date. And even then, like 6 months is, you're really pushing it, right? Because most reviewers, they don't really want to put anything out there until really 2 to 4 months before the publication date. So, but you want it to be something where it's like a build, right? So, you get reviews that you can then share on social media, that you can then promote to like your local newspapers and magazines and radio shows and TV shows. And, the more attention you get, the more you can add to your press release, the more that you can add to whatever promotional material you're sending out. And then, the more attention that you can get, the closer to your actual publication date. Also recommend having a release party. And in that release party, I also suggest that that release party is done in tandem with other authors from your area, because then that way you're attracting not only your friends and family and fans, but theirs as well, right? So everybody can kind of, you can broaden your network much faster that way than just reaching out to your local bookshop and saying, hey, I'd love to do a signing. Also, if there's an area that you're interested in doing book signings, may I suggest reaching out to some of your friends in that neighborhood or that area and ask them, like, what are the hottest booksellers in the area? And then reaching out to those booksellers. Since COVID, booksellers are much more hesitant, I guess is the polite word, to have live book signings. A lot of them, they are pretty much just going to go with the surefire hits, right? So those authors that they know already have a big following and are going to attract people into the store as well as online. So if you're a newbie, a new face, and you don't have a reputation with them, then they may not be interested in having you there. But if when you approach them, you mention, oh, I'm friends with blah, 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 right, who recommended I come to you, or, give them something that makes it have greater meaning for them, then there's a greater likelihood that they'll let you have your book signing there or do some kind of an appearance there. And again, partnering with other authors is always a smart play. I don't know, Ben, what do you think?
If your book has a some kind of special meaning for a certain day, like my own Always Ready was it was a book of poems about the Coast Guard. We released it on August 4th, the Coast Guard's birthday. So it joined in with that traction of anybody looking for Coast Guard birthday stuff. I had a reading on Veterans Day for the Recon Trilogy. And so that just it tapped into the mindset of the season. So if you've got a theme that does that, like Procure National Werewolf Day, where that's the way to go. And but there's really, if it's an idea and it works, It's not a bad idea at all. And you don't really know that till you have the idea and you test it out. But if you have a network of writers, like this weekend, I'm reading with a group of Southwest writers at Santa Fe Public Library. And it'll grow my own personal network. And I've got to go to Santa Fe, but then I'll deal with that. And we'll just tap into that circle of that network. The networks are out there.
And to Ben's point, I mean, I think the biggest mistake we see, not just authors, but anybody make, is killing it before you even try, right? Because the reality is, until you actually try something, you don't know if it would succeed. So, again, within legal constraints, blah, blah, blah. Like, don't go jumping off a bridge. We've got a pretty good idea of what's going to happen if you do that. But, if you've got an idea, then go figure it out, try it. If it doesn't work, who cares? You tried it, you learned from it, and then you can use that as a greater understanding of what to do in the future. So, don't kill an idea before you've even done anything with it. Caroline says, how do you deal with sequels, especially with memoirs? Mary Dugan, Sister of My Heart, is visiting me now. Big part of Terror at the Sound of the Whistle. We have been talking, as she is 11 years younger than me, as my own sister, about what happened after the memoir ended. Skip husband jumped in and said, "This is another book. What do you think? I could write it." Well, I'm gonna, since Ben was your editor, I'm gonna have Ben take this, and then I'll throw in my 2 cents.
The key, I think, to any sequel is to have the same energy level that you had with the first one, and because it's transparent when, oh yeah, well, let me tell you what happened after that. But it sounds like just those discussions alone will probably provide you with the energy to make it a continuation. But I also think, knowing the story for Terror, Caroline, I think the next one, it's the continuation of the characters and maybe the setting, but it's probably a standalone start and finish kind of memoir in its own right. So in a way, it's a sequel. In a way, it's not. So I think if there's energy there to write it, and that goes for anything. But especially since you know that book is coming out, and it's right on time to start now, so you can shop it in the wake of the first one.
And all great points. We actually, if you go and look up Suzanne Samples, she is an author. We published 3 of her memoirs about brain cancer or her struggles with brain cancer. And what she did is she came up with, like, how am I going to package this, right? What's the beginning and middle and end of this? Because really it's a narrative, right? And, how can I make this something that, people would really they'd want to read. And I think all 3 of her books got starred reviews. And one of them was one of the ones that was named Best of the Year by Kirkus Reviews. So also be aware, though, unless either the memoir got a lot of attention, like a lot of really positive attention, and or it sold really, really well, you may have a difficult time selling it. So just be aware of that. So just because a publisher picked up the memoir previously doesn't mean they're going to pick it up again or pick up the second one. I think to the point Ben was making as well, like, you got to make sure it's, it got picked up the first time around for a reason. So you need to make sure it still has that, your sequel or the whatever it is, it also has similar energy, right? It has something that will make someone actually want to pick it up. So Rod says, oh, wait, I'm going to put a little twist on that. Interestingly, though, for fiction books, there are statistics that have come out more recently that new authors, their books don't really actually start selling until the 3rd book comes out. So that could be like the 3rd in a series. Generally speaking, it's typically like 3 books that are in the same genre, if that makes sense. So it may not be the same characters, it may not be the same world, but it's like if they're all, romantic thrillers, like that kind of thing. Because by the time you've got to your 3rd book, then readers are like, they know you, they've seen your books out there for a while, they've seen your face out there for a while. And so when they get to the 3rd book, and again, assuming the 1st and 2nd were really solid stories and the 3rd one's a solid story, then they're going to go back and they're going to buy your previous 2 books, right? So a lot of times now when you hear about like this huge bestseller, brand new guy, blah, 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 it's actually not their 1st book. It's probably the 3rd or 4th that they've put out. So let's see. Oh, Rod says, I saw a show years ago. Their promotion was throwing live turkeys from a helicopter. I don't think that was real. I thought that was off of, remember WKRP in Cincinnati? That was, yeah, that was a stunt for that TV show, for WKRP in Cincinnati. Because thank God, at least so far, I don't believe anybody's been foolish enough to think that turkeys can fly. Yeah, it was Les Nessman. He was the one who did it, right? And then it was like, oh my God.
He didn't know. He didn't know domestic turkeys couldn't fly.
Yeah. Caroline says, great points, Lisa and Ben. Think I can flesh it out and we'll see how Terror goes. Waiting in the wings. Yep, sounds good. Rod says, yep, that's the one. Yeah, I don't know anybody who grew up in during Generation X or Y who didn't know Les Nessman. So cool. Wow. So we're already at 5:30 or 8:30, wherever you may be tuning in from. If you're watching and you're new to this, I'm Lisa Kastner. I'm here with Ben White, one of our amazing editors, and we are typically here with you each week on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time, to answer whatever questions you may have. If you're like, who are these fools and why do I need to listen to them? You know what? Honestly, that's a great question. Why should you listen to us? Well, we've got we run Running Wild and Rise presses. We have won several best of the year according to Kirkus Reviews. We've gotten lots of starred reviews. We've been featured in a lot of different publications. We were featured in Forbes. Still blows my mind. We've had books named among the most anticipated of the month, including Dance Among the Flames by Tori Eldridge for May of last year, by Bustle Magazine. And we've had books that were called basically like they completely reinvented the relative genre that the author was writing in. So I'd say with that, I'd say we're pretty solidly have an okay idea of what's going on. That said, I think there's a lot of value if you are somebody that is really interested in storytelling, no matter the format, and you're really curious about the craft of writing or the business of writing, right? And the business of developing a brand for yourself, all that kind of stuff. All of that is evolving so much in the current market. This is actually probably a decent place for you to come and at least get our thoughts and opinions on it. I actually go to a lot of conferences, and so I get to interact with a lot of authors and editors and other publishers. And it's pretty interesting to see how things are changing and pretty dramatically and pretty quickly. So Rod says, Ben is a wizard editor and you are the queen of editing. I am always listening. Well, that's very kind. I agree. Ben is a fantastic editor. So Caroline says, because they have great information and are bright, smart, and a writer's friend. Well, we do our best. We absolutely do our best. And to us, by the way, like, this is more of a family. I think it just works a lot better when everybody treats everyone equally and fairly. And, it's more of a collaboration versus an actual, like, a contractual thing. Because to me, this is a creative business, and yes, it is a business, don't get me wrong, right? But I think the writer needs to be heard, not only for the story being told, but also in the evolution of whatever it is that you're collaborating on. So awesome.
I just had a writer she I got to a point in the novel where she had written notes instead of the story. She had written notes to herself.
Sure.
And we decided to call time out from the editing and let her polish those notes and flesh it out the way she wanted it once she knew my process. And so it was a great chance for her to to do just that. Take all her ideas, and it's 100,000 word novel anyway, and
Wow.
she's got a lot of input coming in and to flesh it out. And I think we'll strengthen it in the long run once we get through it. But it's progressing nicely because we agreed, that mutual agreement to flesh it out, get your ideas. It's accepted. It's not that we're rejecting it, sending it back to you. It's accepted, and we're working on it. So let's make it the best we can. So that's Lisa's point about being cooperative and making sure the work itself is what we're focused on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about making sure it's absolutely the best story that it can be, right? Because we want as many readers to get their hands on that story as possible. So you want to make sure that it's something that, there's no massive lags in the story. Like I'm working with one author right now, and there are sections that it's interesting information, but is it really relevant to the overarching narrative? No. Right. And it's some, I oftentimes will make recommendations in those cases. Like, I really want you to go back and ask yourself, how is this actually feeding the overarching narrative? How is this supporting the story? And if the answer is, well, it's really interesting, then you don't want to include it, right? If the answer is more definitive, like, well, this is going to provide information that the reader's going to need by whatever, right, for this part of the narrative, then that's different. And it may just be that we want to tighten up the language a little bit, right? We want to tighten up that section. So, I have had a few authors who, I mean, you could hear the panic when they got my feedback, because there were portions where, it either got really wordy, or, I tend to ask a lot of leading questions to encourage the author to think through the overall story. And, and that can be frightening, because you may have finished writing this 2 years ago and you can't remember why the hell you did it, right? But that's okay. It just means you go back and reread it and remind yourself, why is that there? Right? So, Rod says, if Ben edits my novel, Stephen King will ask for my autograph. Cool. Sure, why not? Margaret asks, how are Running Wild Press and Rise Books distributed? Oh, I almost forgot. So we just started that whoever asks the best question will get their choice of a paperback book. And Margaret, you won, by the way. You won last time. So I need you to message me on the side and let me know what book you want and where you want it sent to, and I will take care of that. So guys, if you're watching, again, ask a question, and whoever wins for the best question for that episode, we will send you your favorite, whatever book you want from our catalog in paperback form. So Margaret asks, how are Running Wild Press and Rise Books distributed to retailers? So I hope this will make you happy. We actually, our distributor is IPG, and IPG is one of the biggest distributors in North America, and I think Europe, or EMEA rather. And that means that when you publish with us, they are available at all retailers, both online and in person. They're also available for libraries and for schools. So what we've seen is, a lot of times, let's say a book gets a really great review or a lot of great blurbs, then we may see an uptick from libraries to pick up, especially ebooks, because again, since COVID, libraries have had their the number of ebooks that people have checked out has increased dramatically, as well as audiobooks. So cool. Great question. I don't know, Ben, can you think of anything that you want to either cover or ask me? Or
when you mentioned blurbs, and then Rod mentioned getting Stephen King to get his autograph, it opens up a discussion about don't hesitate to ask for those blurbs from even the most famous people. I was thinking of a book called My Killing Time in Iraq, or My War: Killing Time in Iraq by Colby Buzzell. It started off as a blog that he was doing as an enlisted soldier. He had so many followers, they finally authorized it, but he turned that into a book afterwards. And one of the authors who did a blurb for him, and I don't know how he did it, except just to ask, was Kurt Vonnegut. And
oh my God,
and that's you take a blog and you turn it into a book, and you get Kurt Vonnegut to do your blurb, you're doing okay. But it's just a matter of asking and going with the theme of who best would help me with this genre, or the characters, or the setting, or anything familiar. That's why we ask for comp titles to help market it, and say it doesn't have to be, well, this is a setting. This story takes place in Georgia, and that story takes place in Georgia, so that's a comp title. No, it goes deeper than that, with the characters and the character types and the story type and even the style of writing and the narrative. Maybe has nothing to do with the other book except for the way the narration flows. So it comes down to just asking. And we had an author ask Bobby Ann Mason, and just out of the blue, he asked her for a blurb. And she was very gracious about it and said, I really don't have time to read your book, but I appreciate you asking. So again, the network of creatives it can be a very tight network. And don't think, well, they're famous, so I'm not going to approach them, because one day, probably not too long ago, they weren't, and they know where you're coming from.
Oh yeah, 100%. And to Ben's point, I know so many authors who approached, and a lot of it too, it's in the approach, right? Like, you want to make sure this is someone that you're familiar with their work. And when you ask them, make sure there's no pressure, give them plenty of time, right? And I suggest you start looking for blurbs right after you're done the editing process with your editor, and send them an advanced review copy, like a digital advanced review copy, and just explain like who you are, what the book's about, how you got to selecting that author to potentially write a blurb. Let them know there's no pressure around the time you anticipate the book to come out, and you would love it if they would at least just read the book, and if they feel inspired to write a blurb, great, and if not, it's all good, right? And you would be shocked. I have a dear friend I knew from when I went to Breadloaf a few times, and her very first short story collection, I have no idea how she got this, but it got sent to Stephen King, and he loved it. And he even mentioned it on like Twitter. And, next thing she knows, she's got the little check mark that used to mean something, right? And, she's like crazy excited. And the book sold nutso. It was absolutely phenomenal. So you just never know, right? Actually, Ben, you and I should probably start scheming who we're going to approach for Family Pack, or who I'm going to approach for Family Pack. I've got some ideas of who I'm going to approach. I tend to be the ballsy one to go for the Stephen Kings, but you also need I mean, still approach people who are more realistic as well. So
We talked about once. What was it? Is it Percy? Ben Percy? Red. It's Red something. He's
oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
is it Percy?
Ben. It's not Ben. It's Red Moon.
Red Moon.
Red Moon. Or Blood Moon? No. I think is Benjamin Percy.
Benjamin Percy, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's not Ben, it's Benjamin.
Yeah. I highly doubt he'll remember me, but I'm happy to approach him.
Yeah.
I figured him, Stephen and Graham Jones, and I can't believe it. I adore her work, and I don't know why my brain just went, whoo. She actually just won the Bram Stoker Award for her book Werewolf, which came out when our book came out. So I shouldn't be surprised that we didn't. We were nominated for a Stoker Award, but we didn't make the finals. Oh, dang it. Oh, well, whatever. It doesn't matter. Let's see. Ben says, you are so right. My platform has grown a lot by really being interested in other people's works. The writing and booktube communities are very welcoming to everyone but salesmen. Well, I mean, but that's it, right? That's the key. Is this is about being sincere and genuinely interested in someone else's work. This isn't about you. And I think that's where a lot of people fall, is that they approach everything from what's this going to do for me perspective, instead of how is this going to benefit both of us, or what can I do for that individual? Because at least me, I get creeped out. Like, it's so obvious when people, I remember I live in Los Angeles, right? So there's a lot of, well, I don't want to talk to you. Like, I don't want to talk to you unless you can do something for me. Right. And it's the same in New York. So, probably in any large city with a large population, and so you can really tell when someone is approaching you because they sincerely want to interact with you. And they actually want to know who you are, versus someone who's approaching you because they've got something they want to sell or something they want to push, or they view you as basically the door opener for whatever it is that they want to do. And it's a very different relationship. It's a very different engagement when you're coming from a place of center, a place of heart, a place of sincerity, versus transaction. I don't know. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, yeah. It's just again the growing of the network and being sincere. It's a craft that you're going to come across people, and I'm reading a book now that is it's my name John Boyne, who wrote the striped pajama book, but it's not that one, but it's another one that's very well written, and so you're going to see things that you wish you could write that way, or think that I need to start writing that way. You really don't. You just need to see that the writing can do that, and then work on your own. And so it's a matter of shamelessly stealing what you can steal, but sharing what you can share.
And I actually, that's a great point. I mean, I have an MFA. I've been to tons of fancy places, right? And the reality is, I mean, yes, I learned a lot from all of them, and I really, really went out of my way to make sure that I would, right? But I learned just as much simply by reading a wide breadth and depth of stories, whether it's a novel or a novella or a memoir, or, when biographies were a thing, a biography, because you never know what you're going to pick up in that person's writing that you can then apply to your own. Because someone's always coming up with something, some ways of accomplishing something that maybe you've never thought of before. And, you finish it and you go, oh my God, wait, how did they do that? Right. And then you go back and you reread that section and you analyze it for whatever it was that they accomplished that you only wish you had done. And then guess what? Now it's in your filing cabinet, right? Now this is among your own tricks of things that you can do for your own writing. And if you're an editor, now this is something that you can advise your authors on leveraging. So
yeah, let it challenge you. Don't stop being challenged, because I'll probably tell this story before. Reading Keith Douglas, an old World War II poet, I didn't write anything for 3 days after I read him, because it was there was no use. It had been written. But so you got to take that and challenge yourself to, okay, if that's where writing can go, let me elevate mine to go there and not be complacent or satisfied. It's a continuing perfection of the craft, and don't fall into patterns.
Absolutely. And don't forget, you can be a brilliant writer and it can be a fabulous story, right? Like there can be a perception that, well, there's commercial fiction over here, and then there's literary and like crafted work over here. Well, that's bullshit, right? I mean, like I religiously read National Book Award winners because those books tend to be an amazing blend of commercial fiction and more of like a literary in-depth narrative with some type of social statement, right? Like I'm reading All My Rage right now, and it is in reality it's a young adult book written from 3 young adults' perspectives, one in Pakistan and 2 are one's a first generation Pakistan American, and the other is she came to the US, right? So you get a really, really interesting, and they're all interconnected, by the way, within the narrative. And it's really, really, it's beautifully done, right? So, it doesn't have to be, well, it's only, lots of big words that somehow come together to form a sentence, or, a great story. It can be, I mean, Stephen King is a great writer, period. Right? I mean, we always hear that he's like a horror writer, but he's actually, I would consider him to be, he does a lot of like horror, magical realism, like literary kind of stuff. Like he really plays a lot. And dude, I respect him for that. So anyway.
Even in Christine, he knew his cars.
Rod says, sorry, go ahead. What?
I'll just read Christine for the car parts.
Rod says, to writers, if you encounter a condescending, cruel editor, run, find a wizard like Ben. I hope that you don't find, I hope that you don't have to work with an editor who's condescending. Rod says, Running Wild and Rise really care about their writers. Well, I mean, honestly, you're the backbone of whatever stories that you're writing. And so we just want to make sure that everybody's being taken care of. Margaret says, loved Cujo. I admit I devoured everything Stephen King wrote through like the 1990s and probably early to mid 2000s. So yeah. Awesome. Well, we only have 6 minutes left. Oh, and the person I was trying to think of was Alma Katsu. So I'm ballsy enough. I'd approach Alma and see if she'd give us a blurb.
We've come up with 3 authors to approach, right? Just tonight.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, oh yeah, and like that's how I got Lee Murray and like Jonathan Mayberry to blurb Cure, is because I knew them, and I thought, well, if I ask, they can always say no, and that's okay. It's not a big deal. And then they read it, and I still remember when I think Lee was just she was only like a third of the way through, and she emailed me to tell me, "Oh my God, this is fabulous! I love this story." And it's one of those that you think, okay, I hope she's not pranking me, because if she's pranking me, like that's okay. And then she sent me the blurb, and I was like, "Oh my God, she meant it. That's so sweet." Or like, I don't know what to do right now. I think I'll go cry in the corner, like tears of joy.
Those blurbs, they work on different levels, different layers, because asking another author to do a blurb for you gives them another dimension of what it means to be an author. Because now again, you're in that creative network, and so being asked is validation for your place in the circle. But the other layer of it is to get it back as the author and see the insights in just a small paragraph, not even a paragraph, 3 lines that hits the high points, and you see they got it, that made sense to them. So that's validation for the author as well, to see that the key points came through and somebody else understood what you were doing, and that's always good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And especially when they pick up like on little subtleties that you may have included in the story that you weren't sure. Well, will anyone other than my editor get this? And when they mention it in the blurb, it's like, oh my God, yay! I don't suck. Woohoo!
Yeah.
So I was gonna.
We all write to an invisible audience, I think.
That's true.
And sometimes it's a matter of expanding that invisible audience and say, well, why am I focused on this very narrow group of readers? Let me see, how could I expand this story out to appeal to more readers? And it's still an invisible audience, but you can expand it just by a word or two here or there, and a character can expand your invisible audience.
And don't forget, going back a little bit to Ben's point about expanding your network, even if they say no, so what? Right now, they know you, they've heard of you. Hopefully, they now have an advanced review copy of your book, and so maybe they'll read it on the side, right? Now they'll know you when you go to conferences. Now they'll know who you are when like if you ever attend a talk of theirs, or if you ever go to like a panel that they're on at a conference, or if you go to a book signing of theirs. So anything that you can do to get your name out there and to get people more familiar with you and who you are. And actually, this is a downfall I very much own, and it's one that to this day, I force myself to stop doing. And that is, you've got to be your own best fan. And what I mean by that is, like, if you get a great review, let people know. If, you've got to, like, I think the most number of views we've had on one of these live streams was 80,000. Which at the time I fell out of my chair. I was like, holy crap, how is this possible? Right. And I was so almost embarrassed that we had gotten that much attention. I was afraid to tell anybody. And it's just like, if you work in the corporate world, or if you, any kind of business environment, no one's going to know unless you tell them. So make sure, don't exaggerate, but make sure that those who you think would gain value from whatever it is that you've accomplished, let them know that. Own it, right? You earned that. So, and with that, we are now over because I just talked a little bit too much. But with that, Margaret, again, reach out to me, message me, let me know what book you want. I will make it happen. Ben and I will confer on who will get it for this week. And with that, as always, love you guys. Rod, Margaret, CJ, Caroline, everybody who is watching, Cree, all awesome to see you. And we will see you guys again next time. Ciao.
Okay, have a good week.